I would say if people want to know more about the in-depth motivations for the show, you wouldn't need to necessarily know these things to enjoy the show. You'll see the depth and enjoy what we're doing and be excited without understanding why it's happening. But if, as far as our motivations comes from there's a good interview that Martin Scorsese does, actually with Charlie Rose, but it's about Fellini and his movies, because Scorsese grew up watching those and learning from that and working that into his craft and directing. And he takes you through every step of why he made certain movies and how he got to different levels. And everybody knows the Pee Wee Herman movie, Big Top Pee Wee. And the Pee Wee movie was modeled after 8½. You wouldn't know it if you watched it probably, but the episodic nature and the flow of it and the surreal nature is modeled after that. And it even has Danny Elfman. And so he got inspired a lot from Nino Rota, who wrote most of the music for Fellini movies. And so consequently, we're using some Danny Elfman music in the show, and it really helps modernize it too. So, and you get a lot out of, I think, watching those, and a good feel for things, and it's fun. And yeah, that's definitely, I'd say, the show this year, having fun with it is something I wanted to do a lot more, and I'm happy to see it now. The outcome is, it really turned out that way. It's a lot of, there's laughs in it, and there's fun, and there's a lot more ups and downs, and it takes you on a ride. My approach, I'd say, changes throughout the year. At the beginning, in the winter, that's just writing music, putting that together, and a lot of things in the show I'll know note for note exactly what I want. And so I'm not too worried about what's going to happen later. I am thinking visually, though, and thinking how they can adapt, or how they can use what we're doing visually. And Scott Chandler and Jay Murphy and I worked together for a long time, so that's an advantage for us, because I know what type of things they like to take advantage of and use. So I have those elements embedded into the music, and so I'm thinking about that, but I'm not really implementing that yet. And then it gets to the stage where we're in now, where it's about really communicating how things need to be performed, and what things mean, and then communicating that to the players too, because that really helps them perform if they know sort of what the emotional mapping is through the show. I'll start with an emotional map before any music's written, and that's really what I'm thinking about in the beginning too. Is there's an emotional map, there's a technical map, there's a density map when it's getting very dense, a little sparser, and then just the volume map when it's loud and not so loud, and then when we're going to jump out super loud and punch everybody. And so, yeah, and then that all has to line up and coordinate. I'll start in the very, very beginning. Sometimes I'll just, before any music's written, I'll graph that out, and the highs and lows of the show and what sort of emotions should be happening. And this year is interesting because we've added a lot of humor, which we don't usually do, because we'll sometimes get accused of being too serious, and we don't mean to. We're just serious about what we're doing, and don't mean to. We're not taking ourselves too seriously. So, and it's good. People love to laugh, so it's important to have some humor in the show, and it makes a big difference. People take you a little more seriously automatically if you have darker, more intense, or maybe even sad music. But then, so some of the lighter things and we do have some lighter things in the show, it's it's more worry about how that's going to be perceived for me. And especially with the end, that's really uplifting, heartwarming, and it just culminates really everything we've done in the show. And I was wondering how that would sound, but it really, now we got that on the field and it really works well. It's a lot of putting things in the same frame that don't normally go together. And we started doing a little bit of that in the Dada show year. And Fellini took that to another level with his movies and surrealism. And it's an interesting way that he approaches the surrealism. And I could back up and say that my goal, one of my goals when creating the show and developing the show, is blend the compulsory and artistic elements in a way that we get something that's greater than the sum of its parts. And, and that's really true overall effect. It's not just music and drill and in drum corps language. And then if you watch a Fellini movie to help explain it in those terms, the music in those movies, written a lot by Nino Rota, which we're using some in the show, that music, it's eclectic, but it's not 20th century, it's not dissonant, it's not what you'd call weird. But it's coupled with the visual aspects of the movie, or he'd have a juggler walk through the scene, or there'd be a clown, and there'd be just things, like you said, that were out of place. And then when you combine that with just a normal music or normal sounding music, and then the whole thing takes on a surreal quality, and you just get something that's a lot greater than the sum of its parts, and it's not just music in a movie. So that's what we strive to do, a lot of that, and just really notice the developments in the show and really produce those in the way that they're wanting to be produced. I get favorite parts of the show, and it's funny sometimes, because what my favorite parts of the show early on are usually the serendipitous things that happen visually to music, where we have certain elements that line up in a way that I don't know if we really expected them to. And it's through what comes through our process of experimentation and how we like to discover things along the way. And I guess specifically, there's a favorite part of the show I have where we're getting into some of the intense, hard rolling parts of the opener, and there's a mellophone trill that's right in your face up front, and it's also, that happens to be a snare drum visual that's happening at the same time, where it's a lot of ghosted sticking, and it's real fast hand movement, so it goes together and really well, and you just wouldn't see it until it's on the field. And then we see things like that, for example, and then develop the show more around the moments we're making.